Cruise ships are built for fun, relaxation, and escape. But what happens when the dream vacation turns into a nightmare you can't wake up from? Tonight, we're going into 5 real horror encounters at sea, carefully pulled from forums, Reddit, and firsthand testimonies. These aren't campfire myths. They're chilling stories that real passengers swear happened. From cabins that don't exist to whispers in the night, every moment will make you wonder if you'd ever dare step on a cruise again. Stay with me until the end. And if any of these stories send shivers down your spine, subscribe to Eerie Hour, hit the bell icon, and drop a comment about which one scared you most. Now dim the lights and step aboard. The first thing I noticed about the ship was how unnaturally quiet it was for something carrying thousands of people. I boarded with the usual excitement, but by the time I pulled my suitcase through the long, carpeted hall toward my cabin, the silence had already wrapped itself around me like a heavy coat I didn't ask to wear. No voices through the doors, no footsteps echoing behind me, just the low hum of the engines, steady like a heartbeat I didn't trust. My name is Aaron, and I hadn't even wanted this cruise. My sister begged me to come. She said, "After the year you've had, you need a break. A week at sea, no work, no stress. It'll be good for you." But I knew from the first night that this was not going to be normal. Cabin 943. That was mine. At check-in, the girl at the desk hesitated for a split second before sliding me the key card. It was small, almost too fast to notice, but her hand lingered like she didn't want to let go, and when her eyes flicked up, they looked almost sorry. Inside, the room looked plain. A single bed, a little desk with a lamp, a round porthole showing nothing but endless black ocean. But the air felt heavy, stale, almost metallic, like old coins soaked in blood. I stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, and something deep inside me whispered not to step inside. That night, sleep never came. Every time I shut my eyes, I heard it. Slow steps outside my door, dragging along the hall. Then silence. Hours later, the faint knock came. 3 taps. I opened the door, heart racing, and no one was there. And before I go further, if you've made it this far into my story, this is your sign to subscribe to Eerie Hour. These aren't just tales. They're accounts pulled from people who swear they lived them. Stay close, because this gets darker. By the second day, I noticed something strange. My hallway seemed empty. Every door had numbers, but I never once saw another passenger step out. I pressed my ear against 942, the room beside mine. Silence. Too much silence. Like the room wasn't real. At dinner, I asked a crew member if my hallway was just empty. His face tightened instantly. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes and mumbled something about overflow cabins. Then he walked off quickly, tray shaking in his hands. By the third night, the noises grew louder. The pacing stopped right at my door. Through the gap at the bottom, I saw them. A pair of feet standing still. They didn't move. Not for minutes, nearly an hour. When I finally yanked the door open, the hall was empty. But the rug outside was wet, soaked through as if someone dripping with seawater had stood there. That's when I realized this thing outside wasn't just passing by. It wanted in. The next morning, I woke with my head pounding. For a second, I thought I imagined it. But when I leaned down, the rug still smelled of salt. Not sweat, not spilled water, ocean. Breakfast was supposed to clear my head. The dining hall was alive with clinking forks, voices, laughter. For a moment, I thought I could drown out the fear. But paranoia doesn't leave just because the lights are on. When I sat at a table, the woman across from me leaned forward. She looked normal, neat bun in her hair, but her eyes darted around nervously. "You're in 943, aren't you?" she whispered. My fork froze. How do you know that? She pressed her lips together, shook her head. Just be careful at night. Don't answer when it knocks. Before I could ask more, a waiter passed, and she went silent, shoving her tray away and hurrying out. My stomach dropped. What did she know? Why warn me? That night, I made the mistake of waiting for it. Around 2 a.m., it came again. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. My chest tightened as I crept toward the door. I didn't fling it open this time. I crouched, eyes level with the floor. No feet this time. But there was movement. Something sliding along the carpet. Thin shapes brushing across the gap like fingers. 5 of them. I stumbled back, pulse pounding, as the lamp on the desk flickered. Not the whole ship, just that lamp. Flicker. Pause. Flicker again, like a signal. Silence followed, but I knew then. I wasn't alone in that cabin. The next morning I stormed to the desk. The same girl was there. The moment she saw me, her smile faltered. "What's wrong with cabin 943?" I demanded. Her lips parted, but before she could speak, a man in a navy jacket appeared. He cut her off smoothly. "Is there a problem, sir?" I asked again, sharper this time. His polished smile didn't break. "Sir, all cabins are safe. Perhaps you're just adjusting to life at sea." He guided me away with a hand on my shoulder. When I glanced back, the girl's face was pale, her hands balled tight. I should have switched rooms then. But something, stubbornness, curiosity, kept me locked to 943. By the 4th night, there was nothing subtle. At 3 a.m., the porthole rattled so hard it shook me awake. Sheets clung to me with sweat. The window shuddered like something was pounding from outside. But we were in the middle of the ocean. Nothing out there but waves. Then I saw them. Faces. Pale, distorted, pressed against the glass. Mouths opening and closing in silence. Hands slapping, streaks of wet sliding down the glass. I scrambled against the far wall, breath caught in my throat. They didn't vanish. They just stayed, staring. And when the lamp flickered again, I understood. It wasn't random, it was communication. Someone or something inside my cabin was answering them. By the 5th day, I knew my room was a trap. I couldn't shake the image of those pale faces, pressing in from somewhere else, silently begging me to open the door. I told myself I'd be smart. Just switch rooms. But when I asked again, the answer was sharp. "We're at full capacity. No rooms available." The man in the navy jacket stood nearby, smiling that same empty smile. "If you'd like, sir, we can send housekeeping to check your cabin," he offered. The thought of strangers in there unsettled me, but I agreed. "Fine. Do it." When I returned, everything looked neat, untouched. Bed made, bathroom cleaned. But the lamp on the desk, the one that flickered, was gone, replaced with a newer one. At first I thought housekeeping swapped it, but taped under the base of the new lamp was a strip of masking tape. 3 numbers written in pen. 943. Why mark it? Why leave it obvious? That night the knocking came again. Not on the door, on the walls. Hollow, heavy thuds, moving through the plaster, searching. Knock. Pause. Knock, knock. Pause. I pressed my ear against the wall, and my blood ran cold. Behind it, someone was breathing. Not faint, not imagined. Heavy, ragged breaths seeped through the wall like someone had their lips pressed right against the plaster. I barely slept that night, tossing, staring at the ceiling, counting the hours until daylight. But it wasn't just the cabin anymore. The next morning I tried to shake it off by walking the decks. The sea stretched endlessly in every direction, the sunlight dancing on the waves. For the first time in days, I thought maybe I was free of that crushing dread, until I saw her, the same middle-aged woman who had warned me before. She stood near the rail, gazing out at the horizon. I walked up carefully, and without turning, she said, "You stayed in the room." My skin crawled. "How do you know about it?" I asked. She turned then, her face pale, hollow, like all the life had been drained away. "Because I did too, 2 years ago. Same cabin." Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "It doesn't matter where you go now. The ship's already chosen you." I pushed her, desperate for answers, but her eyes suddenly darted behind me. I turned. A crew member stood far too close. That polished smile stretched across his face, the one I was beginning to hate. "Enjoying the ocean view, sir?" he asked politely. When I spun back around, the woman was gone, vanished. There was no way she could have moved that fast, not with the open deck stretching wide and empty. But she wasn't there anymore. That night I tried the one thing I hadn't yet, leaving for good. I packed my bag, stormed down the hall, and headed for the stairwell. But the ship twisted beneath me. Every corner looped me back to the same hallway, the same doors, the same numbers repeating. 939, 941, 943, again and again. That's when I realized I wasn't just lost. The ship wasn't letting me leave. Finally, I forced open the door to what should have been another room. My heart dropped. The number on the wall was 943, my cabin, and this time, the door wasn't shut. It stood wide open, waiting like a mouth in the dark. I froze, suitcase handle trembling in my grip. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but the endless hallways had already proven themselves traps. There was nowhere else. The moment I stepped inside, the air shifted, freezing. My breath fogged in the dim light. The new lamp flickered once, buzzing to life in a sickly yellow glow. The tape under its base glinted faintly, daring me to peel it away. My suitcase hit the bed with a thud as I bent down. The tape wasn't masking tape anymore. It was parchment, brittle and stained with something dark. The numbers 943 weren't written in pen. They were smeared in thick dried ink, or blood. My hands shook as I tore it off. Etched into the metal under the lamp was a phrase, "Another one for the ship." My stomach lurched. I snapped the lamp off, but the words glowed faintly in the dark. Then the whispering began. Dozens of voices murmuring all at once, overlapping into a sound that wasn't language. I pressed my palms against the wall. The plaster rippled under my touch, like skin, like something inside was pushing outward. Knock, knock, knock. The door slammed shut on its own, locking me inside. I spun, yanking at the handle, screaming. Nothing. The whispers grew louder. My suitcase toppled from the bed, clothes spilling across the floor. But mixed in weren't mine. A stack of faded black and white photos scattered across the carpet. Passengers smiling on deck, raising champagne glasses, waving beside lifeboats. Every face had been scratched out, gouged deep. The last photo slid free. My breath caught. It was me, standing with my suitcase, that nervous smile from the day I boarded. But my eyes had been carved into black pits. I staggered back, throat closing, when I saw the reflection in the porthole. Not stars, not the sea, faces. Dozens of pale, warped faces pressed to the glass. Their mouths opened in silent screams, hands dragging trails across the window, begging to come in. And in the middle of them was her, the woman from the deck. Her hollow eyes locked on me, lips moving soundlessly. Then all at once the whispers matched her mouth. They spoke in one voice. "It's your turn now." The glass shuddered, cracking outward as pale hands clawed from the other side. I slammed my back to the door, pounding and screaming. But no one came. The lamp snapped on by itself. The numbers under its base had changed. 944. My stomach dropped. It wasn't mine anymore. It was the next one. The ship was moving on. I wasn't just trapped. I was about to be replaced. The porthole burst inward. Icy seawater poured across the floor, rising fast. The crewman's polite voice echoed from somewhere in the room. "Welcome aboard, sir. Enjoy your stay." Salt water stung my eyes, choked my throat. I fought the door, but it held. The tide reached my chest, my neck, my chin. The faces in the glass didn't scream anymore. They smiled, wide, unnatural grins welcoming me. The woman pressed her hand to the glass, her eyes rolling white as her lips formed one final word. "Stay!" The water swallowed me. I thrashed, lungs burning. Then suddenly, silence. No water, no pressure, no pain. I stood in the cabin, dry as bone. The bed made, suitcase zipped, lamp glowing softly. But when I looked in the mirror, it wasn't me staring back. Pale skin, sunken eyes, lips blue as if drowned years ago. The reflection grinned, though I hadn't moved. Behind me, the door opened with a cheerful click. A family entered. A father, mother, young boy dragging luggage, laughing nervously. The boy froze when he saw me. "Daddy," he whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Why is there a man standing in our room?" But his parents didn't notice. They walked right through me. I turned slowly back to the mirror. My reflection leaned forward, whispering words that cut into me like knives. "Another one for the ship." The door clicked shut. The lock turned. And the cycle began again. Now the question remains, how many cabins are already filled with passengers who never checked out? And when you book your next cruise, how can you be sure the number on your lamp doesn't already belong to someone else? Because on this ship, the dead never leave. Story 2. Ever notice how the ocean doesn't just surround a ship, it swallows it whole? That's the terrifying part of cruises. You're trapped in a floating hotel, cut off from the world, nothing but black water below. Tonight's story comes from one such voyage, an encounter so chilling it haunted the woman who survived it. Her name was Vanessa Harper, a 33-year-old elementary school teacher from Oregon. And if you ever find yourself on a ship standing alone in the fog, listen closely. If you hear wet footsteps behind you, don't turn around, because once you look, he'll know your name too. Story 3. I didn't book the cruise. That's the first thing you need to know. My name is Rachel. I'm a school teacher from Ohio, and the last place I ever pictured myself was on some luxury ship. My perfect vacation is a cabin in the woods, bad Wi-Fi, quiet nights. Not casinos and water slides in the middle of the ocean. But the ticket came anyway. First class, all expenses paid, with my name printed in clean, sharp letters, no return address, no note. Just a white envelope pressed with the ship's crest, a design they called the Ocean's Embrace. At first I thought it had to be a scam, some fake sweepstakes too good to be real. But when I called the cruise line, they confirmed everything. My name was on the manifest. My cabin was 309, already paid in full. They even emailed me the boarding pass. My friends warned me not to go. My sister begged me to rip the ticket up. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who would spend that kind of money on me? Who knew my home address? Curiosity pushed me forward. I told myself I'd just get on, take a look around, and leave at the first stop if it felt wrong. But the second my feet hit the gangway, it didn't feel like chance anymore. It felt like I had been chosen. The other passengers were buzzing with joy, cocktails in hand, snapping photos, smiling wide. The crew didn't pay me much attention, except for one man. He was older, a steward with hollow cheeks and cloudy eyes that didn't seem to focus. When he scanned my ticket, his lips shaped words he never spoke out loud. He stared at me too long, like he wanted to remember every detail. Inside, the ship was beautiful. Polished railings, chandeliers swaying softly with the motion, thick carpeting that carried the faint smell of salt and something older, something sour beneath the perfume of cleaners. The hallways twisted and repeated, making me dizzy. My cabin waited at the end. The door was already unlocked. Cabin 309. Bigger than I expected. Too big. The bed was already turned down like someone had been waiting for me to arrive. A bowl of fruit sat on the desk, but it wasn't fresh. The bananas were black spotted. The grapes shriveled. When I picked one up, a line of tiny ants scattered across the wood. My stomach turned. I wanted to leave, but on the dresser sat a small note, folded perfectly square. In neat handwriting it said, "Welcome aboard, Rachel. We've been waiting for you." The back of the paper was damp, as if it had been pressed into seawater and left to dry. My chest tightened. Then the lights flickered. Only for a moment, but just long enough for me to see the mirror across the room. My reflection wasn't standing still. It was leaning forward, smiling faintly though I wasn't. If you're still here, this is your sign to subscribe to Eerie Hour. Some stories sound fake. Others you wish were. The ship hadn't even left port yet, and I knew something was wrong. When the horn finally blasted, shaking the glasses in my cabin, I was frozen on the edge of the bed, gripping the note until my knuckles turned white. Outside, people cheered and waved streamers as the ship pulled from shore. Inside, silence pressed heavy against my ears. I tried telling myself it was all some strange marketing trick, maybe part of a viral campaign. But when I opened my cabin door, the hallway stretched empty. No chatter, no rolling luggage, no footsteps, just the soft vibration of engines deep below. That's when I noticed the cabin doors across from mine. Each one had a neat brass number, 307, 311. But directly across from 309, there was nothing, just a plain blank door, no number, no peephole. I stepped closer, pressing my ear against the wood. Silence. Then faint scratching, not nails. More like something carving from the inside out. I stumbled back, colliding with a crew member pushing a cart of linens. He didn't blink, didn't look at me. His eyes stared forward, empty. "What's behind that door?" and I asked, voice shaking. He didn't stop, didn't even slow. Just rolled past, wheels squeaking once, then fading away. Dinner didn't calm me. The dining hall was grand, golden chandeliers swinging above, a quartet of violins playing softly by the buffet. I sat at a long table already set with glasses of wine and steaming plates. Families filled the chairs. Couples leaned close. A man in a navy suit nodded politely at me. I tried to join in, asked the woman next to me where she was from. She smiled politely, chewing, but never answered, as if she hadn't heard me at all. My chest tightened. I was invisible, or maybe ignored. But then the music shifted. The violins bent their song into sharp, uneasy notes, a wrongness that prickled against my skin. The others didn't react. Forks clinked, laughter bubbled. But the music was rotting. When I turned, my heart dropped. The older steward, the one who scanned my ticket, stood in the corner, hands clasped, head tilted toward me like he was studying. When I blinked, he was gone. Later, restless, I climbed to the upper deck. The sea stretched forever, black and cold, the moon staining it silver. I leaned against the railing, trying to breathe. Then I felt it. The ship trembled under my feet, almost too faint to notice, like something huge had brushed against the hull. The vibration crawled through my bones. A man in a hoodie stood a few feet away, eyes wide, staring into the waves. He looked at me, mouth opening like he wanted to speak. But then his face froze. Footsteps echoed behind me. I turned. The deck was empty. When I looked back, the man was gone. Not walking away, just gone. Back in my cabin, I shoved a chair under the handle and locked the door tight. The mirror still felt wrong, the reflection just slightly behind my movements, like it was lagging. On the dresser, beside the rotting fruit, another note sat, the ink still wet. Cabin 309 was never meant to be occupied. Stay inside after midnight. I hadn't written it. I hadn't seen anyone enter. Yet here it was. My eyes snapped to the clock. 11:58. The second hand jerked forward. 11:59. The walls seemed to close in, pressing tighter with every tick. My pulse pounded as I sat frozen on the bed, torn between obeying the warning or running. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, then total black. The low hum of the engine dipped into a groan, deep and terrible, like something alive beneath us. I grabbed my phone, but the screen stayed black, unresponsive though I knew it wasn't dead. A sound rose outside my cabin, not footsteps, not voices, something heavier. A long, slow scrape like metal dragged across the carpet. The sound moved door to door, closer, closer, until it stopped outside mine. The chair braced under the handle, shook violently. Once, twice. The wood groaned. I stumbled backward, clutching the bed frame, holding my breath, but the door didn't break. After a long moment, the scraping continued down the hall, fading. Relief barely hit before another sound replaced it. Whispers, dozens, maybe hundreds, layering together in a rhythm that wasn't human. They weren't outside anymore. They were inside the walls, breathing behind my headboard, beneath the floor, crawling around me. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the voices drilled through bone, sharper, clearer. And though the words weren't English, I understood. Join us below. Always below. A sharp crack jolted me upright. The mirror had split down the center, jagged like lightning. My reflection stared back, but its lips moved, though mine stayed shut. Silent words matching the whispers. My stomach dropped as the second hand ticked once more. Midnight. Every light in the room flared back on, blinding. The mirror went dark, reflecting nothing but shadow. My ears rang in the sudden quiet. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps, not at my door. At the blank one across the hall, the one with no number. I crept to the peephole, hands shaking. The corridor was empty, yet the knocking went on. Louder now, sharper, like it wasn't asking but demanding. Then came a voice. A woman's voice, smooth, steady, but with an icy edge that froze my blood. You shouldn't have come here, but since you did, you'll have to choose. The handle on the numberless door rattled hard. I stumbled backward, my chest thundering. The note on my dresser slid off and fluttered to the floor, caught by a draft that shouldn't exist in a sealed cabin. I bent down and my breath caught. The words had changed. Open it, or it opens you. My vision blurred, the letters twisting on the page. My chest heaved like I had been sprinting, though I hadn't moved an inch. The sound of the handle twisting bled into my skull. It was steady, patient, like whatever was inside knew I'd break eventually. But I refused. I bolted. Grabbing the chair from under my door, I yanked it away and swung the door wide. The corridor yawned before me, lights flickering, long shadows breaking the patterned carpet. Still I heard it, the faint knock-knock from across the hall. I didn't dare look back. I pushed toward the atrium, the ship's heart, where crowds always gathered. At this hour it should have been empty, silent, but instead I heard voices, laughter, glasses clinking. Relief surged until I stepped inside. The grand lounge gleamed with golden light. Chandeliers glittered, soft music curled through the air. Dozens of passengers mingled by the piano. Champagne glasses raised, dressed in the exact same evening clothes from dinner earlier. For a second, it felt normal. Then I saw it. Their movements were too smooth, too in sync. Their laughter rang hollow. Their eyes, every single one of them, swiveled to me at once. A woman in a red gown broke away from the group. Her smile was wide, too wide, her face pulled taut like a mask stretched thin. She raised her glass. You heard the knock, didn't you? I froze. The others began whispering, not a conversation but a chorus, a strange twisting cadence I'd heard before, from inside my walls. Below, 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 I staggered back. Their bodies shifted together, moving as one, footsteps hitting the carpet in unison. I spun and fled. But the ship was different now. The halls warped, staircases looped in circles, corridors doubled back where they shouldn't. Yet always, always, those synchronized steps trailed behind me. Finally, I burst into a narrow corridor where the deep hum of the engines rumbled louder. I turned. The deck was empty. When I looked back, the man was gone. Not walking away, just gone. Back in my cabin, I shoved a chair under the handle and locked the door tight. The mirror still felt wrong, the reflection just slightly behind my movements, like it was lagging. On the dresser, beside the rotting fruit, another note sat, the ink still wet. Cabin 309 was never meant to be occupied. Stay inside after midnight. I hadn't written it. I hadn't seen anyone enter. Yet here it was. My eyes snapped to the clock. 11:58. The second hand jerked forward. 11:59. The walls seemed to close in, pressing tighter with every tick. My pulse pounded as I sat frozen on the bed, torn between obeying the warning or running. Then the lights flickered. Once, twice, then total black. The low hum of the engine dipped into a groan, deep and terrible, like something alive beneath us. I grabbed my phone, but the screen stayed black, unresponsive though I knew it wasn't dead. A sound rose outside my cabin, not footsteps, not voices, something heavier. A long, slow scrape like metal dragged across the carpet. The sound moved door to door, closer, closer, until it stopped outside mine. The chair braced under the handle, shook violently. Once, twice. The wood groaned. I stumbled backward, clutching the bed frame, holding my breath, but the door didn't break. After a long moment, the scraping continued down the hall, fading. Relief barely hit before another sound replaced it. Whispers, dozens, maybe hundreds, layering together in a rhythm that wasn't human. They weren't outside anymore. They were inside the walls, breathing behind my headboard, beneath the floor, crawling around me. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the voices drilled through bone, sharper, clearer. And though the words weren't English, I understood. Join us below. Always below. A sharp crack jolted me upright. The mirror had split down the center, jagged like lightning. My reflection stared back, but its lips moved, though mine stayed shut. Silent words matching the whispers. My stomach dropped as the second hand ticked once more. Midnight. Every light in the room flared back on, blinding. The mirror went dark, reflecting nothing but shadow. My ears rang in the sudden quiet. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps, not at my door. At the blank one across the hall, the one with no number. I crept to the peephole, hands shaking. The corridor was empty, yet the knocking went on. Louder now, sharper, like it wasn't asking but demanding. Then came a voice. A woman's voice, smooth, steady, but with an icy edge that froze my blood. You shouldn't have come here, but since you did, you'll have to choose. The handle on the numberless door rattled hard. I stumbled backward, my chest thundering. The note on my dresser slid off and fluttered to the floor, caught by a draft that shouldn't exist in a sealed cabin. I bent down and my breath caught. The words had changed. Open it, or it opens you. My vision blurred, the letters twisting on the page. My chest heaved like I had been sprinting, though I hadn't moved an inch. The sound of the handle twisting bled into my skull. It was steady, patient, like whatever was inside knew I'd break eventually. But I refused. I bolted. Grabbing the chair from under my door, I yanked it away and swung the door wide. The corridor yawned before me, lights flickering, long shadows breaking the patterned carpet. Still I heard it, the faint knock-knock from across the hall. I didn't dare look back. I pushed toward the atrium, the ship's heart, where crowds always gathered. At this hour it should have been empty, silent, but instead I heard voices, laughter, glasses clinking. Relief surged until I stepped inside. The grand lounge gleamed with golden light. Chandeliers glittered, soft music curled through the air. Dozens of passengers mingled by the piano, champagne glasses raised, dressed in the exact same evening clothes from dinner earlier. For a second, it felt normal. Then I saw it. Their movements were too smooth, too in sync. Their laughter rang hollow. Their eyes, every single one of them, swiveled to me at once. A woman in a red gown broke away from the group. Her smile was wide, too wide, her face pulled taut like a mask stretched thin. She raised her glass. "You heard the knock, didn't you?" I froze. The others began whispering, not a conversation but a chorus, a strange twisting cadence I'd heard before, from inside my walls. Below, 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 I staggered back. Their bodies shifted together, moving as one. Footsteps hitting the carpet in unison. I spun and fled. But the ship was different now. The halls warped, staircases looped in circles, corridors doubled back where they shouldn't. Yet always, always, those synchronized steps trailed behind me. Finally, I burst into a narrow corridor where the deep hum of the engines rumbled louder. I blocked the number, closed the listing, and reported him. That night, I pushed a chair under the doorknob. I barely slept. Every sound made me jump. Pipes knocking, footsteps outside, cars in the distance. For weeks, every silver sedan looked like his. Every man in a cap could have been him. I carried my keys between my fingers whenever I left. I stopped posting my address on anything. The next time I sold something, I met people in public, mostly police station parking lots. I even bought a dolly so I'd never have to depend on a stranger's help again. But what I can't shake is that one sentence. It wasn't part of the sale. He put it there on purpose. He wanted me off balance, wanted me to think about what could happen in a stairwell where no one else was around. He left with a desk, but he tried to leave with more than that, with my sense of safety in my own home. If I could go back, I'd have closed the door the moment he refused to help. I'd have kept the desk, given it away to a neighbor, anything. Instead, I told myself, just to get through it, that it was almost over. I share this because it still lingers. Nothing happened. No crime, no police report, no headlines. But the scariest moments are sometimes the ones that leave nothing to prove. Just a single sentence, a rope in a trunk, and the image of a man who wanted me to wonder what could have happened. I moved to Cleveland, Ohio in the fall of 2010 to start my master's at Cleveland State University. I rented a basement apartment off Euclid Avenue. If I cut across Chester and slipped in near Rhodes Tower, I could be in the department office in 10 minutes. The building smelled of dust, old carpet, and toner. It felt solid. By October, I was offered a part-time job in the department, answering phones, handling schedules, updating donor lists, recruiting. I took it right away. Tuition and rent didn't care about pride. The chairman was an older Jewish man named Dr. Leonard Katz, though everyone just called him Doc. He wore wool sweaters that shed and carried around a heavy metal ashtray that looked like it belonged in a diner. He smoked a pipe, always packed too tightly. The university had banned smoking in offices years ago, but his was tucked at the very end of the hall, just past the copy room. He kept the door cracked, fan blowing at the window, and smoked anyway. He loved to talk. He told me about his parents in Brooklyn, about the synagogue his grandfather had helped build, and the Hebrew words he thought I should know. He showed me everything about my job, and then little by little, he started teaching me parts of his. Before long, I was helping with recruiting visits, alumni events, and donor meetings. We brought in money and people ignored the smoke. Before grad school, I had trained as an EMT, so he asked me to check his blood pressure a few times each week. He had gout, high blood pressure, and a heart that wore him down. though he didn't like to admit it. I'd write the numbers on sticky notes and slide them under his heavy brass paperweight. On Mondays, I brought him a jar of my grandmother's soup. He'd twist the lid open, breathe in the steam, and close his eyes like he was storing the moment. By winter, the routine felt like it would last forever. I got in early just after sunrise, turned on the lights, made coffee, and answered emails in the quiet. Doc arrived mid-morning, arms full of folders, a pipe in his pocket, and that heavy ashtray banging in his hand. He'd clear the pipe bowl even when it was already empty. One late winter evening, my phone rang at home. Doc's voice was calm but strange. He said he hadn't been able to urinate all day. I told him I'd call his son in Shaker Heights, and then an ambulance. Paramedics from university hospitals took him to Cleveland Medical Center. A nurse later said he wouldn't have lasted another day. They relieved the blockage, and the look on his face afterward was almost lost, like he didn't know what to do with the relief. He moved into a rehab place in Beechwood, clean and quiet with bright windows. I drove out with folders every few days so he could still feel connected. He circled names, scribbled tight notes, told me who to ask for money and how to ask. He said he missed the echo of our hallway. Late February, a colleague called his room to check in. A paramedic answered. They suspected a stroke. He died later that day at Cleveland Clinic. The funeral was in a small chapel on Taylor Road in Cleveland Heights. There was gray slush in the parking lot. His son thanked me for the soup, and I didn't know what to say. The first week back in the office without him felt wrong in a way I couldn't name. I boxed up his computer and phone, labeled everything with blue tape, but left the ashtray in the middle of his desk. Nobody wanted to touch it. The smoke smell in the hall slowly faded to a faint, sweet trace. A week after the funeral, I got in before sunrise. The building was quiet, running on night heat. I unlocked the office, turned on the lights, and set my bag down. The phone on my desk rang. Nobody called that early. I picked up, said hello. There was no voice, no silence, just steady static, like a radio between stations. Then came a sharp sound, metal against metal. I jumped up, chair rolling into the cabinet. It was the sound of Doc clearing his pipe into the ashtray. I had heard it 1,000 times. Then there was a long breath of static, like someone was near the phone, but refusing to speak. The line clicked off. I checked the caller ID. It said internal with the 4 digits that had been Doc's extension since the day I started. The same extension printed on the old directory in the supply closet. I knew it by memory. I walked down the empty hall to his office. The light above his door was off. The lock hadn't been changed, so I opened it with my key. The ashtray sat in the center of the desk. 2 small flakes of ash, nothing more. The phone base was gone. I had packed it myself and placed it in the copy room. The line had been cut the week before. I told myself I'd imagine the number, imagine the sound. I told myself a lot of things until the rest of the staff arrived, and normal office noise drowned it out. Late that morning, Officer James O'Malley from campus police came into my doorway. His face was pale. He asked if everything was fine on our floor. I said yes automatically. He shook his head, looked down the hall. Just after sunrise, he said, while on rounds, he saw Doctor. He watched him walk past the copy room and into his office. Same sweater, same careful steps. The door shut behind him. The light never came on. O'Malley stood there, unsure if he should knock. He didn't. When he came back minutes later, the hallway was empty. He wrote down the time on his clipboard and kept moving. He didn't ask me anything else, and I didn't tell him about the call. That afternoon, the tobacco smell returned. Not strong, not spread through the whole floor, just a faint sweetness over the carpet outside his office. I stood there too long, breathing it in, staring at a closed door with a nameplate that would soon change. The semester ended, then another. I graduated the next year and took a job across town. When I visited campus, the hallway on the 4th floor looked more worn each time. A new chair sat in Doc's old office. The ashtray disappeared into storage. In fall 2018, I came back to give a talk. I got there early, walked the halls by habit. The fourth floor was dim and cool. The new chair had a glass nameplate where Doc's paper sign used to hang. I stepped into the copy room to print my handouts. On the top shelf sat a familiar cardboard box. Flaps folded over, blue tape across, black marker and neat letters with his name. I lifted the flap. Inside lay the old handset, coiled cord wound tight, a yellow disconnect tag taped to it with the month and year. I set the flap down and kept my hand on the box, listening. From the hallway came a sharp strike of metal on metal, the sound of a pipe being cleared. It came from the direction of his office. Not loud, not dramatic, ordinary, but out of place in a building where no one had smoked in years. I walked out, looked both ways. The hall was empty. I breathed in, and there it was again, the faint, sweet note of old tobacco. Before leaving, I stopped by telecom. I asked about old calls as if a technical detail would calm me. The tech checked records and said Doc's line had been physically disconnected in early March of that year. No forwarding, no patch, no way an internal ring could have come through after that. I thanked him and rode the elevator down. I watched the numbers climb, fall, climb again as others got on. Now, whenever I return and pass that corner, I don't linger. Sometimes the hallway is only a hallway. Sometimes it is not. It was a crisp October day in 2019 when my wife Sophia, our 6-year-old son Tommy, and I drove to a pumpkin patch near Gratina, Nebraska. Friends told us it was one of the biggest in the state. Hay rides, pumpkin picking, and a corn maze that covered 10 acres. We lived in Omaha, so it was only a short 30-minute drive. Tommy was buzzing with excitement, bouncing in his seat, talking about how he wanted to get lost in the maze like the kids in his cartoons. Sophia and I laughed and thought it sounded perfect. One last family outing before the cold set in. We arrived around noon. The place was crowded, families everywhere, kids running with candy apples, the air full of cider donuts. We started with the easy things. Picked pumpkins, rode the hay rack, fed the goats in the petting zoo. Tommy loved every second of it. Then we headed toward the corn maze. The sign out front said it was family-friendly, though it could still take an hour to finish. At the entrance, they handed us a map, but Tommy begged to play hide-and-seek instead. "Come on, Dad, I'll hide and you find me," he said, his whole face lit up with excitement. Sophia rolled her eyes but agreed. "Okay, but we stick together." The maze was taller than I expected, the corn stalks rising more than 7 feet high, dry leaves rattling in the wind. Paths twisted in every direction, full of dead ends and looping turns. We started playing, and Tommy sprinted ahead, giggling, slipping behind walls of corn. I found him quickly the first few times, but soon he ran further away, shouting, "Can't catch me!" Sophia and I spread out just a little, calling for him. At first it was lighthearted, but after 10 minutes of not seeing him, my chest tightened. "Tommy, this isn't funny anymore," I shouted. Sophia's voice broke with worry. "Honey, come out!" We kept searching, but the maze was disorienting. Every corner looked the same. The sun was still up, so we tried not to panic. We bumped into other families, but none had seen a boy wandering alone. By 4 p.m., staff announced over the loudspeakers that the maze would be closing soon. We told one of the workers that Tommy had gone missing. They radioed others to check, but nothing. "Kids hide all the time," one man said casually. "He'll turn up." But as the crowd thinned out, dread set in. Sophia began to cry. We ran to the car, grabbed flashlights, and pushed back in, even though the place was closing down. Night fell fast. By 6 p.m., it was pitch black. No moon, only stars. The wind moved through the corn like whispers. We shouted his name again and again. "Tommy, where are you?" The sound bounced back as an echo, but there was no answer. Out here, phone service was barely working, but we called 911 anyway. The dispatcher said deputies were on the way, but could take 20 minutes. "Stay put," she told us, but we couldn't. We went deeper, flashlights cutting across the endless stalks. About an hour later, Sophia spotted something in a muddy patch. It was Tommy's little red sneaker, stuck as if he had tripped. My stomach sank. "Oh no," Sophia whispered. Small footprints trailed off, but alongside them were bigger ones, adult-sized boots pressed into the dirt. Then came a sound, a low whistle, the kind you'd use to call a dog. It came from close by. Corn rustled. "Who's there?" I shouted, swinging my light, but silence answered. We followed the prints, hearts pounding harder each step. The maze no longer felt like a game. It felt alive, like it was closing in. Sophia gripped my arm and whispered, "What if someone took him?" I didn't want to admit it, but I knew this part of Nebraska had drifters, people hopping trains, sleeping in fields. Farms were lonely places. People went missing. Sometimes they were never found. Soon we stumbled into a clearing, flattened out like someone had been living there. Trash scattered the ground, empty cans, a filthy sleeping bag, cigarette butts. My skin crawled. Then a voice came from the shadows, gravelly and male. "Looking for the boy?" A figure stepped forward, tall, ragged, a worn coat hanging loose. His face hidden in shadow, but his eyes wild, beard unkempt. "He's safe for now," he muttered, smirking. "But you gotta play my game." My throat went dry. Later, cops told us his name was Earl, a drifter who had been wandering the Midwest for years, slipping through towns, dodging warrants for theft and worse. He'd been camping in the cornfields near Vallis, watching families at the maze, luring kids with candy or toys, pulling them into the twists where parents couldn't see. Sometimes he demanded money. Other times, kids just vanished. He'd done it in Iowa too, but no one pieced it together. "Give him back," Sophia screamed. Earl laughed, backing into the corn. "Follow me if you can." But one wrong turn and he's gone. Then he bolted. We chased, but he knew the maze like his own yard. He'd cut secret paths, hidden shortcuts. We'd hear Tommy's voice, "Mommy," echoing through the stalks, but then realized it was Earl mimicking him. My light caught pieces of him, his coat flashing between stalks, then gone again. Sophia tripped in the mud, sobbing. I pulled her up, but we were lost now, too. Earl taunted us, his voice floating. "Over here!" Then silence. We found Tommy's other shoe smeared with mud. My mind spun. Ransom notes in barns, kids missing in fields, stories of bodies in ditches. Real headlines I'd read before, and now it was us. Finally, a cry cut through the dark. Real this time. "Daddy!" We ran, shoving through corn, until we burst into another clearing. Tommy was there, tied to a stake, gagged, his eyes wide with terror. Earl lunged at me with a rusted knife pulled from his pocket. Instinct took over. I tackled him, rolling hard in the dirt. He slashed my arm, hot pain ripping through me. Sophia grabbed a rock and smashed his hand. He screamed, dropped the knife. I pinned him, shouting for help. And then, flashlights, barking dogs, deputies flooding in. They tore Earl off me, cuffed him, untied Tommy. Our boy was shaken and cold but alive. Later, we learned Earl had been watching us since noon, waiting for Tommy to wander. He planned to demand $5,000, hide out in an abandoned silo nearby. That night, we drove home in silence, Tommy asleep in the back. Sophia held my hand, but neither of us spoke. The pumpkin patch shut the maze down for a week. Even so, I still wake sweating, hearing that whistle in the night wind. Corn mazes, never again. In December of 2007, my family's world changed forever. My cousin Leah Hickman was only 21. She was bright, kind, and just beginning her adult life. She worked at a hair salon in Huntington, West Virginia, and lived in a small apartment building near Marshall University. The last time I saw her was just before Christmas. She was happy, talking about how she couldn't wait for the holiday break. Always smiling, always planning ahead. None of us could have imagined what was about to unfold. On the night of December 14th, Leah finished her shift at the salon and went home. Her apartment was on the third floor of a plain brick building. From outside, it looked ordinary, the kind of place for college kids and young workers. But inside, it always felt unsettling to me. Narrow halls, dim lights, and a silence that pressed down at night. Leah lived with her half-sister, but that night she was alone. She had called a few friends earlier in the evening, but after that, no one heard from her again. The next day, she didn't show up to work. Everyone grew worried right away. Leah was responsible, never one to skip without a word. Calls started going out. First, the salon tried her phone, no answer. Then her sister, still nothing. By evening, my aunt, her mom, was in panic. Leah always checked in. For her to fall silent was not just unusual, it was unthinkable. We went to her apartment together. I'll never forget the feeling of walking up those stairs, praying she'd just be inside, maybe embarrassed that everyone was worried for nothing. But when we reached the door, it was locked tight. Her car sat in the lot outside. Inside, her purse and shoes were there, but Leah wasn't. It was one of the most unsettling sights I'd ever seen. Everything looked normal, as if she had stepped out for only a minute. No broken glass, no struggle, nothing out of place, just silence. She had simply disappeared. Police got involved right away. They searched the area, knocked on neighbors' doors, talked to everyone in the building. A few neighbors thought they might have heard footsteps late at night, but nobody was certain. The worst part was the basement. Dark, damp, full of old storage rooms. Police checked it but didn't find anything the first time. The air down there was heavy, unsettling. For days the search stretched on. Flyers with her face covered Huntington. Our family sat by the phones, waiting for news that never came. Each night I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes I saw her, where she might be, if she was scared, if she was even alive. Then on December 19th, 5 days later, police returned to that same basement. That's where they finally found her. Leah's body was hidden in a crawl space beneath the stairs. Even now, typing these words makes my chest tighten. To know she had been there the whole time, while we walked above searching for her, is unbearable. The case exploded across West Virginia. People wanted to know who could have done such a thing to a kind, hardworking young woman with no enemies. Police questioned everyone: co-workers, friends, neighbors in her building. Rumors spread, whispers of what someone might have seen or heard, but no clear answers ever surfaced. To this day, no one has been arrested for her murder. It remains unsolved. What haunts me most is how ordinary that night began. Leah finished work. She came home. She may have thought about Christmas, maybe watched TV, maybe got ready for bed, and then someone stepped into her life and ended it. No alarms, no cries for help, no warning signs, just sudden, consuming silence. For me, the hardest thought has always been how alone she must have felt in those moments. An apartment is supposed to be safe, especially your own, but for Leah, it became the place where her life was taken. Sometimes I drive past that building in Huntington. It looks ordinary now, just another spot near campus, with young people going in and out, unaware. I wonder if they know what happened inside, or if to them it's just a forgotten piece of brick. Our family has kept her memory alive, but the ache of justice denied lingers. We still don't know who stole her away or why, and that's the most terrifying part. Someone bold enough to take a young woman from her apartment, hide her body just feet away, and vanish without a trace, could still be out there. Every time I think about it, I get that same sinking chill. It could happen to anyone. Leah was only 21. She had her entire future ahead, and on one ordinary December night, she disappeared from us forever. Hi, I'm Hug, and I work as a police sergeant for the New York City Police Department in the Bronx. It wasn't the career I had dreamed of. I had wanted to act, to perform on TV or film after college, but auditions never worked out. So the badge became my path. Most of my shifts weren't extreme. Calls about people in distress, arguments that calmed down, routine patrols. But in October 2016, I lived through something I'll never forget. It was around 6 p.m. when a call came in about a woman behaving erratically in her apartment on Pugsley Avenue in Castle Hill. Neighbors had called before. This time, I was sent along with my team. Dispatch hinted it could involve someone emotionally disturbed. When we arrived, an EMT was already inside speaking to the woman in her living room. She had set down a pair of scissors she had been holding and seemed calmer. The EMT explained the situation. Instead of waiting, I decided to move closer, thinking I could de-escalate things myself. She looked about 60, gray hair, worn face. When we approached, she backed into her bedroom. My instincts took over. I followed, other officers behind me, assuring her she was safe, that we just wanted to help. She had the scissors again, but I talked her into placing them on the bed. Relief hit me for a second. I thought we were making progress, but then it all went wrong. I stepped closer, trying to gently secure her before she grabbed the scissors again. Protocol says wait, take it slow, use non-lethal options if possible, but I thought I could handle it then and there. She moved quicker than I expected. She lunged to the bed, pulled a baseball bat from under a pillow, and stood tall, gripping it hard. My heart pounded. I drew my gun, backing up, shouting for her to drop it. "Please, drop it! I don't want to hurt you!" I shouted again and again, but she didn't listen. She raised the bat, stepping closer, swinging for my head. In that instant, I saw my life end. I fired 2 shots. She fell to the floor, the bat slipping from her hands. She moved weakly, groaning, then went still. My hands shook as I radioed for help. The EMT rushed in, and we began CPR until paramedics arrived. But it was too late. Her name was Deborah Danner. She was 66 and had lived with schizophrenia for decades. Later, I learned she had written about her struggles, about how mental illness was like a curse, painful, but not supposed to be fatal. After it happened, guilt crushed me. Why did she swing? I whispered to myself. Why did it come to this? I wasn't a violent man. I had handled dozens of these calls before without pulling the trigger. But in that second, it was her or me. I thought of my family, my future, everything on the line. Could I have waited for the crisis intervention team? Could I have used my taser instead? The department had clear steps for these moments, but it had all unfolded too quickly. Within hours, I was placed on administrative duty. My badge and gun were taken. The mayor said I hadn't followed protocol, that Deborah might still be alive if I had. Protests began the next day. Crowds marching from her building to my precinct, chanting about Black Lives Matter, chanting about police brutality. I was white, she was black. The headlines wrote the rest. Months later, I was arrested, charged with second-degree murder. The trial was grueling, every detail laid bare. I told the judge exactly what I saw, how I acted when the bat was raised. In 2018, I was acquitted. Self-defense. But acquittal didn't erase the memories. I still ask myself, could I have saved her life another way? One of my partners, Edward, had helped with CPR, working with me for nearly 10 minutes until paramedics arrived. We had hoped she'd survive. She didn't. I'm still on the force today, back to routine duty. Nothing like that has happened since. But that night changed me. It showed me the razor's edge we walk in this job, especially with mental illness involved. We need better training, more support, more options, because no one should die that way, and no officer should have to live with it. In 2013, I went to San Juan, Puerto Rico, for my brother's destination wedding. The air was warm, the ocean breeze light, the whole family buzzing with joy. I was 18, sharing a resort room with my older sister and her boyfriend. It should have been perfect. But something strange started. It began with a phone call around 8 p.m. We were in the room quiet, my sister reading, her boyfriend scrolling his phone. The room phone rang. I answered. A deep, cold male voice said, "This is the front desk." Something about his tone made me uneasy. "You need to shut up. You're being too loud," but we weren't. No TV, no music, nothing. I hesitated, thinking maybe my dad was pulling a prank. "Is this serious?" I asked. The man growled, "Dead serious." Then he hung up. My dad swore it wasn't him. My sister and her boyfriend exchanged uneasy glances. We tried to shrug it off and went down to the hot tub with family. But the tension lingered, heavy, like a shadow we couldn't shake. Hours later, after midnight, we returned. The room felt different, colder somehow. Then the phone rang again. The same voice, sharp with anger. You think you're funny? Running around the halls like animals. You need to stop, my voice shook. We weren't out there. He hung up. This time I called the actual front desk. A calm, professional woman answered. No one from the hotel has called your room tonight, she said firmly. When I explained, she sounded concerned, promising to send someone up. 15 minutes later, a staff member knocked. He looked weary, like this wasn't new. Quietly, he told us, we believe the calls are from a guest down the hall. He's caused trouble before. We're asking him to leave tomorrow. Please don't engage. We nodded, but just as he left, the phone rang again. My sister's boyfriend picked up. There's a man in this room, he barked, trying to sound firm. Silence. Then the line went dead. We unplugged the phone, hearts racing. That should have been the end. But at 3 a.m., a faint scraping noise woke me. I sat up. The others slept. Holding my breath, I listened. The sound brushed against our door, slow, deliberate. A shadow appeared under the crack. Someone standing just outside. I didn't open it. I stood frozen, staring, until the shadow slid away. Morning came, and with it, a note slipped under our door. Shaky handwriting on hotel stationery. You ruined my night. I hope you understand now. I heard every word, every step. I don't forget people who make me lose sleep. No name. No number. Just that. My skin went cold. We hadn't been loud. He had been listening, watching. He knew when we came back, when we went to bed. He had been outside our door, right there while we slept. The hotel confirmed he checked out that morning. Security reviewed footage but wouldn't tell us what they saw. We never got a name, never saw his face. For the rest of the trip, I couldn't relax. Every sound woke me. I kept peeking through the peephole, waiting for him to return. What chilled me most wasn't the calls. It was knowing how easily he had slipped into our lives for 2 nights, controlling our fear without ever stepping inside. Even now, when the phone rings late at night, my heart skips. Because I'll never forget that voice. I was 15 that summer when my family spent our vacation at the Hilton Hotel in Orlando, Florida. It was one of those huge resorts with pools, arcades, and families everywhere. We were there for 2 weeks trying to escape the heat back in Chicago. My parents let me wander around during the day while they lounged by the pool or went to theme parks. That's when I met Jake. He said he was 18 from Texas. Tall, messy brown hair, always smirking like he was planning something. He seemed cool at first, but there was something about him that felt off. Jake was trouble from the start. He snuck into the gym at night, messed with vending machines, and loved pulling dumb pranks. One time he made me help him swap the men's and women's bathroom signs just to watch people's reactions. At the time I laughed, but now I realize how stupid it was. He had this wild energy, always saying life was boring without chaos. I didn't really have friends at the hotel, so I tagged along. My parents met him once in the lobby and thought he was polite enough, but they warned me not to get into trouble. On our 4th night, things changed. It was 2 a.m. I was in my room scrolling my phone while my parents slept when I got a text from Jake. Hey man, can't sleep. Let's go prank some doors. Knock and run. Meet me in 5. I hesitated but eventually slipped on my sneakers and snuck out. Jake was waiting by the elevators, grinning. We started knocking on random doors, sprinting around the corner before anyone answered. It felt harmless at first, just some old people annoyed at being woken up. But then Jake led me down a side hallway I hadn't seen before. It was narrow, dim, with a staff-only sign hidden by a plant. The lights flickered, and it smelled old and damp. At the end was a maintenance door cracked open. Jake pushed it slightly and peered in, smirking. That's when I saw him. A tall, thin old man in a faded gray hotel uniform, pale skin, deep wrinkles, eyes so dark they looked like shadows. Before I could react, Jake suddenly yelled behind me, his voice sharp and cruel. Dad, here he is. Tonight's meal. Catch him. My whole body froze. Meal? I spun around, and Jake lunged at me, his playful smirk gone, his face twisted into something mean. He was bigger and stronger, but I swung blindly and punched him in the nose. There was a crunch, blood everywhere, and he stumbled back. I bolted down the hall, sneakers pounding the carpet. Behind me, Jake cursed, and the old man's raspy voice growled, "Get him!" I sprinted for the main hall, too scared to look back. I didn't dare wait for the elevator, so I tore down the stairs, lungs burning. I crashed out a side door into the pool area, the humid night air hitting me hard. Without thinking, I dove straight into the deep end, clothes and all. The cold water shocked me, but I swam to the bottom and held my breath, hiding in the shadows. Above, I saw the old man step onto the pool deck, scanning the water. His voice echoed, low and threatening. "I know you're here, boy. You can't run forever." My chest ached, bubbles slipping from my nose. Just when I thought I couldn't hold it, I heard another voice, my dad's. He was outside with a flashlight, calling, "Have you seen my son? He's 15, wearing a blue shirt." The old man muttered quickly, "No, haven't seen anyone." But he sounded annoyed. That was it. I burst to the surface, gasping. My dad spun around, shocked, and pulled me out of the pool. I was shivering, dripping, pointing toward the old man. But when Dad looked, he was gone. Just shadows. We hurried back to the room where I told my parents everything. Jake, the hallway, the old man, the word meal. It sounded insane. My mom thought it was just kids pulling a nasty prank. My dad guessed maybe some weird father-son duo trying to scare me. But the next morning, when we asked at the front desk, there was no Jake from Texas registered. No old man on staff either. Nothing. I blocked Jake's number and barely left the room for the rest of the trip. Maybe it was all some twisted setup, or maybe something darker. I still don't know. It started about 6 months ago when my wife Laura and I moved into our new home outside Dallas. It was our first real house with a backyard and a pool. At first, the neighbors seemed normal, a family with 2 kids, a boy and a girl. But soon their toys started flying over our fence into our yard. At first, I tossed them back, but it kept happening, almost every day, and it wasn't by accident. I'd hear the kids giggling as they threw things, balls, action figures, even remote control cars that clogged our pool filter. Then came the doorbell. They'd ring nonstop saying they needed their toys. At first, I let them in to grab their stuff, but it happened so often that it felt invasive. Finally, I told them no more. They couldn't come in. The boy scowled, the girl pouted, and they left. But after that, toys flew over even more, piling in our yard. Laura started getting creeped out. What if they climbed the fence? We checked our Ring camera and saw them whispering and laughing at our door before running off. Things escalated when their dad, Mike, showed up. Big guy, construction worker, tattoos up his arms. He said I was keeping his kids' toys and demanded I let them back in. I told him firmly it was our property and his kids needed to stop. He walked off angry, and that night, toys slammed against our sliding glass door hard enough to crack it. We installed more lights and locks. Laura said she didn't like him. Bad vibes. Then came the night that changed everything. I was away in Austin for work. Around 2:17 a.m., Laura called me, whispering frantically. Someone was banging at the door. I checked the Ring feed. Mike was on our porch, pounding and yelling, "Open up! Give me my kids' toys!" He started kicking the door, shaking the frame. Laura screamed as glass shattered. The kitchen window. He was reaching inside to unlock it. I told her to lock herself in the bedroom and call 911. Police arrived fast, sirens blaring. Mike froze when they showed up, but they saw everything. Him bleeding from his hand, the broken window, the Ring footage. They cuffed him, but as they dragged him away, he looked straight at Laura and said calmly, "I'll kill you one day." The officers wrote it down as a threat. The next morning, his wife apologized, saying he had anger issues. But he's still living next door, out on bail. Laura jumps at every sound at night now. We've reinforced the windows and added cameras, but his words linger in my head. "I'll kill you one day." I wonder if he meant it. I wonder if one night he'll try again. It was July 2017 in Austin, Texas, one of those sticky nights where the heat clings long after the sun sets. My name's Emily, and I'd been swimming at Zilker Park Pool all month to unwind from my stressful downtown office job. That evening I arrived late, around 7:30, just as the place was emptying. A couple of people packed up and left, the lifeguard waved goodbye, and suddenly I had the whole pool almost to myself. I slipped into the water, chlorine sharp in the air, cicadas buzzing in the trees. Lap after lap, my thoughts faded. By the time the sun dipped orange across the sky, the place was deserted. Just me and my old Honda in the lot beyond the fence. Peaceful until I felt it. That prickling sense that someone's watching. I scanned the tree line, nothing but shadows. I shook it off. But then I heard the squeak of the gate. I looked over, ajar, swinging slightly. "Hello?" I called out, but no answer. Just cicadas humming. I swam toward the shallow end, uneasy, and that's when I saw him. A tall figure stepping from behind the changing rooms. Hooded jacket in 85-degree heat, boots heavy on the concrete, face hidden. He stood there staring, hands deep in his pockets. My stomach tightened. I tried to sound casual, calling, "Pool's closing." He didn't move, just started walking slowly along the edge toward the deep end. Something swung from his hand, a flashlight, or maybe something worse. My heart raced as I swam for the ladder, dragging myself out, water streaming off me. My bare feet slapped against the concrete. He kept coming closer. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more chilling tales from the sea, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll never miss the next voyage into the unknown. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next story.